our first question for you, I know since you've also grew up in Evanston, that
Hmm.
firsthand that like there's not a lot of farmland or large scale agriculture happening in our area, or not that I was aware of. You might know
Hmm.
more than I on that. And then, so what sparked your interest in working with farm animals and getting into the research?
I honestly initially had no interest working with farm animals. A lot of like freshman, sophomore, and sci students want to be companion animal vets, which was what I wanted to do. And then I took this core class called ANSI 103, and it's basically a class where you do rotations at three different farms. We have like, I think we have beef and sheep farms, dairy, poultry, horses, and I had beef, dairy, and poultry. So throughout that semester, I realized that I really like working with livestock. I like working with farm animals. And I also was an undergraduate research assistant working with mice at that time. And I was honestly ready for a change. And, I still wanted to go to vet school. And when you go to vet school, they want you to have a lot of experience working with different animals. So I thought, what better time than now to work with livestock?
So just to move on to our next question, can you describe your role at the University of Illinois Dairy Farm and what a day doing your job looked like?
Yeah, my role was to work as an undergrad research assistant. So I was one of the undergrads that like took care of the cows enrolled in a research trial. So their day-to-day care, making sure that they're healthy, they're being fed. I had a lot of morning shifts this semester to work around my evening classes. So my day usually would start at like 4:15 a.m. when I'd wake up, and then I would be at the farm by like 4:45, and then I would go to the barn, like it's called the treatment room, but that's where we like change. I would put on my coveralls, my boots, my farm gear, and then get all my supplies ready for the day. And then I would be at the actual barn where we keep our girls at around like 5 a.m. and start working with them. Our shifts like technically started at 6 a.m., but that's when the farm workers would actually take the girls to get milked. And once they're at the milking parlor, it would take like an hour for them to come back, so I'd have to sit around and wait. So just to avoid that, I would try to get all my work done before 6 a.m. Um, we had two different pens of cows. One was called the dry cows, and the dry cows were pregnant. They weren't lactating yet. And then the other pen was the fresh cows. The fresh cows were the ones that had given birth and they were giving milk. So I would start with the fresh cows because they're the ones that are going to get milked and try to finish all the work then. And then I would start working with the cows that are still pregnant that won't be taken for milking. So on a good day, I would say it would be done by like 7:30 a.m. And during that time, it depends on the day what we have to do, but the cows would get what's called a health check. So I would take their heart rate, their respiratory. I would make sure that when they're walking, they're not limping. I would check over their body, make sure there's no sores, they didn't like step on a rock or something. Um, I would also make sure that each cow has that's in the fresh pen has not given birth or fresh, sorry, the dry pen. I had to make sure that they were still pregnant, or if they were showing signs of birth, then I had to go tell my grad students or the farm manager. And it's really important because we have to make sure that when the babies are there, we have to make sure that everything goes smoothly, the mom's okay, the placenta comes out. So because, when you work with animals, you can't predict when they're going to give birth. You can't really like, pinpoint how they're going to feel that day. So it all depends what my work would be. If the mom gave birth, then I would have to wait until she's done milking to, make sure that she's health checked and she's ready to be moved into a different pen.
Next question for you is, in the College of Aces, it seems like you have had the opportunity to learn about
Mhm.
companion species in and outside of the classroom. Where do you feel that you learned more about the unique cow-human relationship?
I would say so. I learned most of what I know from, working on the farm and through lectures because I didn't like intern on a dairy farm during the off seasons. But I would say I learned a lot about cow behaviors and handling cows on YouTube. There's a lot of like homestead YouTube channels. People blog about, their small scale or large scale operations. Um, and it really helped me learn how to handle animals because they're more experienced, they have like some of them, it's like a family thing, generations of, farmers. And I was able to learn how to like approach cows or, get away when they're showing specific signs. And I think that really helped keep them at ease when I worked with them because I didn't feel as nervous when I knew what their flight zone was, when they would want me to move away or when they want to move away. So, yeah, YouTube was a really nifty tool for this research project.
Question. How have your experiences with cows influenced your perception of human and non-human relationships? More specifically, are they more or less intertwined than you originally thought?
I always thought that humans and animals have very intertwined and complex relationship. Just because I grew up, owning a pet and then working with shelter animals and then now working in agriculture, I think that our domesticated animals are very much dependent on us for their care. Especially like working at the farm when, the female cow, when she gives birth, we have to make sure that she's going to be okay. Sometimes they're low on calcium, so we have to give them a calcium shot. And, if they were in the wild and they developed, these issues post birth or they developed mastitis, then, you know, it'd be really bad for them without the medication that humans could give them. And, on the flip side, for humans, we need animals for food, for companionship, their labor, and a lot of other reasons. I would say science, wouldn't advance without animal models. Like, I think earlier on in COVID, one of my professors from animal sciences developed like a makeshift or like a really rapid assembly, what is it called, intubator, like a ventilator or something. So, and they use pigs for that. So I know that a lot of hospitals actually, will work with researchers and use pigs as a model for humans. So yeah, I would say that we're very much intertwined with animals.
Yeah. Next question is, oh yes, okay. In our class, we talked about the special bond between humans and dogs and how that co-history affects a great deal of our interactions. When you were working at the dairy farm, were you able to develop any personal relationships with the cows?
Um, I wouldn't say that I had personal relationships with the cows the way I do with like traditional companion animals like dogs and cats. Um, Probably the biggest reason is I try not to get attached to my research animals because, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be taking them home. I don't get to just pack up at the end of the trial and give them a new life. Um, I did have a few cows that like I would sit with and give extra attention to, but that's because they would seek it out. So the more like tame and used to people they are, the more they're likely to come and like seek out your attention. Um, I will say every cow had her very own unique personality, and it was really endearing to watch it play out. One of our cows, she was like built really like short and square compared to the other girls, but she was always the one that was like bossing them around. And whenever like a herd was moving really fast, that it was because she's pushing everyone around. We had other really sweet cows that would like always just kind of follow you around, always wants to know what's going on, but I tried really hard not to get attached to them. Yeah.
But you mentioned the unique personalities of some of the cows that you worked with. So we were
Mhm.
going to ask you, can you describe a specific moment while working with the cows that blurred the line between human and non-human species? Like
Mhm.
anything you noticed where the cows were attempting to like communicate or something
Yeah.
along those lines.
They do communicate a lot with each other. They're very social creatures. They don't like being by themselves. So you can always see them kind of like huddled together in groups. What, and for dairy farms, I think it's pretty standard practice that when a calf is born, you separate it from the mom. And, when that happens, the mother cow would react as any, mother would. She's very upset. She's making a lot of noise. She's rushing around. She's charging at anyone that's coming near. I'm trying to think what else. Hmm. They're very clear about what they're okay with you doing to them and what they're not. Like they don't like being, they don't like their temperature being taken, but they really like head scratches. So, I spent a lot of time negotiating with my cows. And I know they don't understand a single word of what I'm saying, but because of like my body language and tone, whenever we had to make them do something they didn't want to do, like walk outside and go get weighed, we'd have to work with them.
Moving forward, do you have any recommendations on how we can be more respectful of our co-history with cows and applying this understanding to like large scale dairy farming?
Um, my experience is very limited to small scale dairy farming. I would say, however, I recommend people to buy their milk from reputable sources. Like I know that there was a huge scandal a while back about a certain large, dairy brand and how they treated their calves and their cows. And when I saw that, I kind of started to buy locally. And I know it's pretty expensive. It could get expensive to buy milk from, farmers around here, but I do try to source them locally just so that I know where the milk is coming from.
Is there anything that we didn't include or didn't ask you that you think would be useful for the purposes of our final project, or anything you would like to share about your experiences or anything like that?
I not much. I would just say that I didn't realize how social cows were. Like you really have to work with them to understand that sometimes it is like working with a giant puppy. They'll just come up to you and they want your attention, and sometimes they nudge you and they're 2,000 pounds. So it's not really, always safe for them to do that. But it was honestly a really amazing experience. They're probably one of my favorite animals now.